Hey there, guys. Today we're going to be talking about the different characteristics of life. It's a main topic in biology because biology is working with living things. So we need to be able to determine what we consider a living thing and what's alive. You might hear some rumbling outside. It's a little stormy. So normally in class we would have a big group discussion, and if we have time, we still will have one on what makes something alive and how we can decide if something is living or not living. There's lots of different questions that we can ask ourselves here, but if you think about it, most things when you think, okay, it's alive, you're talking about people and animals and insects. And then we have to start thinking about trees, and we have to start thinking about different bacteria and single cell organisms that might be living in water. So when you start really getting into all of those things, you have to start thinking to yourself, okay, what makes this living? Now, this is one of those topics where if you go online and just search characteristics of life, you will get lists that range anywhere from like 4 different characteristics up to about 15 or 16. We are going to cover 8. And those are the 8 that I really want you to know. If you look at the back of your cover page for your unit, there will be spaces for you to write all these notes down. And then I will share an image of the notes that I have and how I would suggest you take them in a separate file. All right, so getting started, the meaning of life is 42. That's just a quote from one of my favorite super cheesy movies and a really great book, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If you ever get a chance to watch the movie, I highly encourage it because it's just good fun. So we're going to talk the 8 main characteristics of life. Let's see if I can find a good spot to put myself so that you can see everything. Okay. So the first characteristic we're going to talk about, and the one that we're going to spend most of our first semester on, is living things are made of cells. So everything that is alive is made up of at least one cell. We do have single cell organisms, but then you and I are made up of trillions of cells that are reproducing and replacing themselves regularly. Cells are able to grow, they can respond to their surroundings and reproduce, and they're really complicated and really well organized, and that is why we're going to spend so much time on them. Every living thing is made up of cells. It's a huge one, and we're going to talk all about all these different aspects of it. Then, our second characteristic, living things are all based on a universal genetic code. And what that means is that all living things are able to store complicated information that allows us to grow, live, and reproduce in what we call DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid. So with very few variations, our genetic code is almost identical to every other living organism on Earth. I know that you've probably heard before we're like 99.8% the exact same DNA as chimpanzees. Well, DNA in every single living thing is going to be set up pretty similarly. So you tweak just a few things and you could have been a bat instead. And it's kind of cool to see how specific and how well organized DNA is, and we'll talk about that again this semester. Number 3, living things maintain a stable internal environment. So this is called homeostasis, which is basically a big word to say that you and your body can help regulate what's going on. So all organisms need to keep their internal system stable, which might be your organs, it might be how your body processes different liquids or different food items. And even when external conditions are changing dramatically, we can still keep homeostasis. So this is kind of a complicated topic, but homeostasis, if you think about it, when you feel cold, your body shivers because it tries to produce heat to keep your body being able to function. If you have a fever, your body sweats to try to get rid of all of those bad toxins in your system. If you are thirsty, you drink. If you are bleeding, your heart is pumping blood and your blood cells are trying to fix it. There are all these different ways where if something goes wrong, it's not catastrophic. Your body has these systems to help kind of keep it in check and keep it moving and going. Living things grow and develop. So you have to think just like a human. We start out as, fetuses and embryos, and then we grow up into adults, and move on from there. So all living things, you think of flowers and trees, you can think of fish, everything has a pattern of growth and development. So we all start as something and then grow into something bigger or something that is more of a different variety. Living things respond to their environment. So organisms, which are living things, can detect and respond to stimuli from your environment. So stimuli is just the plural of stimulus, which is essentially just a signal that you or your body gets. So like if I was to touch fire, my body would say, well, that wasn't smart, that hurt, and I would pull back. So that is me responding to my environment. Like I said earlier, if you're cold, then your body starts shivering to try to create more heat internally. So you are not just kind of walking around and have no sense of feeling, have no sense of what's going on. Your body is always trying to respond to what is happening around it. Then living things obtain and use energy. This, for humans, is basically when you are eating food and drinking liquids. So all organisms, all living things take in nutrients and the energy that helps us grow, develop, and reproduce. So we'll talk a lot about how we get those nutrients and how they travel through our body and our system. But without getting energy from nutrients, we cannot grow, which means that we then cannot produce cells. So we then do not qualify as something that's living. And we talk a lot about our metabolism when we talk about humans, especially taking in nutrients and converting it into energy. So your metabolism is a combination of chemical reactions, and that's how you, let's clear this up. It's how living things are going to build up or break down material for your body to use. And then living things as a general group evolve. So humans are not the same that we were thousands of years ago. Trees are not the same they were thousands of years ago. Dinosaurs are not the same they were thousands of years ago. Chickens are relatives of the dinosaur. They are not the ferocious creatures we think dinosaurs to be. And so over the 3.5 billion years that the earth has been inhabited by living creatures, we have evolved and we have changed as groups of living creatures. Now, they do say that evolution, which we'll talk about in the spring, is going to link all life to a common singular origin about 3.5 billion years ago. And then living things reproduce. So all organisms are going to be able to reproduce to make new, similar organisms. You have two different ways that happens. There's sexual reproduction, where cells from two parents combine to form offspring, which is how humans reproduce, and asexual reproduction, where a single organism can produce an identical offspring. And this tends to be bacteria, but we'll talk about a few different things that can do that later on. So those are your 8 characteristics of life. We will dive deeper into each of these as we reach them throughout the year. Make sure you take your notes, and I will see you in class.